everyone. So with us losing our greenhouses and stuff, we do have some plants that can go on the ground. We're just going to have to cover them with something like when the temperatures are getting low. And I'll kind of go over what vegetables we're going to have to cover at what temps. And then I'm also going to be doing a separate box thing for plants that are not quite ready to be planted, and I'll show you what I'm going to do on that as well. But first we got to feed the animals, and then we're going to go from there. So the animals are fed, we are going to get some breakfast, and then we're going to get to work. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to be building a cold frame for the seedlings that are not quite ready to be planted. Even though it's really warm outside today, we're not out of the danger zone for our last freeze. For my area, the danger zone is like May 24th. So I've still got another month before I'm out of that danger zone. So I think it's tomorrow night for sure, and I think Tuesday night we're supposed to get below freezing temperatures. We're in that time of year where you can hit, above 70 during the day, and at night you're down at like 28. So there are some plants that can go in the ground, and if you get below a certain temperature you would just cover them with a sheet or whatever, but there's ones that you really shouldn't be planting in the ground until you're way past your frost date. So for example, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, collard greens, kale, onions, parsley, peas, radish, spinach, turnips, those things, they can be planted in the ground, or even in the raised beds, or they can be planted outside, but you would need to cover them if you get below 28 degrees. And beets, carrots, cauliflower, celery, lettuce, garlic, chives, potatoes, things like that, those can go in, go outside, be planted outside, and would need to be covered if you're getting below 32 degrees. Now there are some that if you get below 34, and freezing is 32, but 34 is kind of like the danger zone for beans, cucumbers, eggplants, okra, peppers, pumpkin, squash, zucchini, corn, sweet potatoes, tomatoes, watermelon. Those are ones that you do not want to plant outside until you know that your nights aren't going to get below like 34 degrees. And if you have to, our situation, if you watch my last video, we lost our greenhouses and half our plants. So we did go buy some starter plants to make up for the ones that we lost, just because it's too late to start seeds now. So we went ahead and bought some starter plants. And then, I do buy a few starter plants every year, and when I do, I save the containers for the following year so that I can, have them for my seed starts. So I have a bunch of those containers that I've saved throughout the years, because you can use them for multiple years. But when you cover them, you don't want to use like a plastic cloth, like painters drop cloth, the plastic. You don't want to use that. So you want to use either like a garden row cover. It's made of a fabric, it's breathable, but will keep the cold off of them. Sheets, like bed sheets, you know, if you have some that maybe are old or whatever, you know, set them aside for, you know, your garden for the times you need to cover those, and you'll just kind of need to make sure they're not laying directly on the plants. You know, put something over it. If you have a garden box, or like what we're going to build, we're going to do a cold frame, and then we also have some of the garden boxes. We're going to be using that also. So, like, another thing that you can do is if you have 5-gallon buckets, like say you have to put your tomatoes in the ground because, like us, you lost your greenhouse or whatever due to a storm or something like that. You can put straw around the tomato plant and put like a 5-gallon bucket on top of it for the night. You don't want to leave it under there, but you know, you could put it under there for the night and then just put a brick on top of it to hold it down. So we might have to do that with some of them because we do have quite a bit of plants. Like I said, we did lose a lot of them, and I did go buy starts to make up for the ones that I lost, but I also, you know, went ahead and got extra just because we've had a few things that have like already gone wrong this year. Before, you want to cover them before the temperatures get down. You don't want to be doing this in the dark, so in the evening, you know, get them covered while there's still a little bit of warmth in the air to trap the heat inside of whatever you're covering them in, and then make sure they're uncovered during the day. Another way that you can do it to protect them, and a lot of people do this for winter sowing. This one's full, but if you have empty milk jugs or vinegar bottles or whatever, so winter sowing, they cut it in half and they put their plant in there. They leave the cap off, and then they put their, you know, their seeds or whatever in there, and then they close it and they tape it shut and leave it outside all winter, and they do their seeds that way. But if you need to, say, use something like this to protect a plant for a freeze, then what you can do is you would take an empty jug. You're just going to keep your cap, take your cap off of it, but just cut the bottom of this off, and you can just put it over the plant, you know, kind of maybe squish it into the ground a little bit, or, you know, a way to, you know, keep it in, or pack dirt around it, and then that way, and you can just take it off, and it'll act as like a little miniature greenhouse. So if you have to cover individual plants, that's an option. I'm actually going to be doing that for some of my plants, but we're going to be doing the cold frame for all of the seedlings that are not ready to come out of the starter trays. We're going to be doing the cold frame for those. I'm going to be planting some of my stuff. I'm going to kind of, because I keep a book of, you know, different stuff for each year that I've learned, and, you know, trials and errors. So I'll probably go ahead and be planting all of the broccoli, the Brussels sprouts, the cabbage. The onions are already planted outside. They've been doing just fine. Kale. My peas are already doing great. I have some peas in starter trays, but then I have others that I put in the ground. And the starter trays, of course, are doing a lot better than the ones that were put into the ground. But my spinach I'm going to be planting. And then if we do happen to get below, I don't think we're supposed to get below 28. I think we're like right at like 30, 31. So those should be fine. I'm going to go ahead and get those planted in the ground. And then everything else is either going to be going into a cold frame, or we're going to be cutting the jugs to put on top of the plant if we have to do it that way. So we have a whole bunch of cinder block that from a wall that was taken down, and we're going to kind of get creative because it was a wall. It has a lot of the mortar and stuff still on it, so rather than sitting there and chiseling it all off because we're on such a time crunch, we're going to be doing it sideways. So I'm going to show you how we're going to be doing that as well, and how we're going to wrap the outside, and we're going to put the windows on the top just to kind of give it extra insulation so that the air can't get in through the sides. So we're going to do that on, like, especially for the seedlings. We're going to put our tomato plants in there. Let's see, all of our pepper plants, our bell peppers, jalapenos, cayenne peppers, things like that. Those are going to go in there. And the corn, I only have a few that I started in seed just because I was curious. I normally just start those on the ground, and I won't plant those until probably not next weekend, but the following, because we're doing a big area of corn this year. So those, I'm going to do a bunch more on the ground, so I'm not too worried about that. Let's see what else. The watermelon, we completely lost all of our starter plants. We lost a lot of our lettuce. And the cucumbers, I'm just starting those in ground because we lost the cucumber starts that we had. So we lost all those. I'm going to start all those in the ground and see how we do on that. I couldn't find any starter plants for cucumbers. So anyway, that's where we're at right now. So I'm going to show you how we're going to be doing the cold frame, and then I'm going to get some of my plants in the ground, and then I will show you how I'm going to do the jug, and hopefully we can get them protected, because like I said, we still have about another month before we are out of the danger zone of the final frost. I'll be watching the weather really close every day to make sure, you know, what temperatures we're supposed to be getting at. If you go to like just a Google search, you can put in what is my last frost date, and it'll bring up the Almanac website, and you can enter your zip code, and it will tell you what the average final frost date is for where you are at. And I just put it into Google to find out what mine was. I just put when's my last frost date, and that's what it brought up, was that website. So you can do that to see what your last frost date is, to know where your danger zone is. Some of them that got hit really hard by the wind or got tipped over or blown across the yard, I kind of put them back in the pots. Some of them that I could, not all of them were savable, and like some of the tomatoes, they were bad. So I'm cutting them at the very bottom, like right at the dirt level, and I'm going to go ahead and keep them in the little pots and see if I can get them to re-sprout. And the reason I'm doing that is because last year I had a major mishap with one of my tomato areas, and I forgot and left the water on in the evening, and this was like late May last year that I did that. Well, when I came out the next morning, everything had ice hanging off of it. That particular patch. I didn't lose all of them, but I lost quite a few. Everything had ice hanging off of them. I was so mad at myself, but lesson learned. And I went through and I cut them all right at the soil level. Well, they ended up coming back, and we got quite a few tomatoes out of them. Some of them, though, when we were heading into the really cold months, the tomatoes were like super green. But you can ripen the tomatoes in the house. You can also do this, it's called green tomato relish that I can, which is really good, especially on bratwurst. Ooh, we should have bratwurst tonight. I think we're going to have bratwurst tonight, and with some of our green tomato relish. But there are ways to kind of save a plant, and of course I don't want all of my tomato plants to be the ones that, you know, are going to be green when we hit cold months. That's why I did get some more starters, because we did lose a lot of our plants. But that's where we're kind of going with that. So let me get things together, and then I will show you how we are going to basically rig a temporary cold frame to keep our starter plants hopefully going for another month. Okay, so we have these window panes. We have a few left that didn't get shattered in the storm, or windstorm. And then we have these bricks. So because it was a wall that we had taken down, the bricks have a lot of mortar chunks on them. Rather than sitting here chipping these off because we are short on time, we're going to put them sideways. And if we go too high, then it's going to be tall enough that we can set our seedlings and maybe even some of the taller plants in there, and then we'll put the windows on top. And we're going to make sure that the windows sit on this flat surface, but it'll still give us room to be able to maybe put a bungee cord across the window so the window doesn't blow up. Then around the sides, we're going to fold a tarp and wrap it to keep air from going in here. And hopefully that will work. So we're gonna, he's working right now to try to get it as level as possible, but we're basically just gonna make a huge cold frame and try to save some of these plants. So this is the area we have so far. And then like I said, we'll wrap something around the bottom just to keep it warm, keep the air from coming in, and then we're gonna put the windows on the top. Since spinach is one thing that can kind of handle a little bit below freezing, I'm going to go ahead and get these planted. These are, I did seeds in buckets that I saved from raspberry plants I got last year. So I'm going to go ahead and get these planted, and then probably the kale as well. Okay, so the way it turned out is we've got 2 bricks high and then 3 windows long, and then the sides we're going to do something to cover those so the air doesn't get in there, so that we can put our seedlings in there and give them a chance to get a little bit stronger before they get planted. Okay, so we're kind of starting to run out of daytime here, but we ended up folding tarps and putting them around the edges to just block the wind. And then we put the plants in there. I even put some in there that really got beat up by the windstorm. I'm going to see, I just kind of cut them. I'm going to see if I can get those to come back. But we put our plants in here. I'm going to give them a quick water because oddly enough, wet soil is warmer than dry soil. I'm going to give them a quick water, and then we're going to put the windows on and figure out a way to tie them down. Well, there you have it. That is our temporary cold frame to try to get our plants through another at least 3 weeks before they go into the actual gardens and raised beds. Well, I hope you all enjoyed today's video of what we're doing to try to save our plants. That is just a temporary thing. It's not going to be a permanent thing. Maybe eventually we'll come up with something more permanent for next year, but that's what we're going to do for now, just to try to get them through. So if you did like today's video, please don't forget to hit the subscribe button, like and share our videos with other people you know that may be interested in them. And remember, even when the wind destroys all kinds of things and puts you in a urgent situation, tomorrow's going to be a new beginning. It's going to be a new day, and we'll move forward. But we are tired, we are sun-beat, we are hungry, because all we had was breakfast today. So we are going to eat and take showers and try to just take a breather for a minute. So I hope everybody is, had a good weekend, and remember, every day is a new beginning. Stay blessed.